Thank you very much, Tao, and thank you to everyone here, especially Mark, for the invitation to speak here tonight as you celebrate the achievements of your own sports stars in all walks of sport. It's very important to honour and celebrate the successes of all who participate in sport, sometimes to celebrate the medals, the finalists, the coaches, but also to equally celebrate the personal bests, the lifetime commitment, the striving and the endeavour, because that is what sport brings to the table. It's the opportunity for all of us, athletes and officials, to strive for personal bests, to strive for personal growth and development, and to learn how to overcome challenges, to learn resilience. Sport teaches and gives us so much more than the medals and the records and the awards. And while we're all here tonight celebrating those awards, I think it's really important for everybody to remember how you got here, how you achieved your success, who helped you along the way, and most importantly, what you've learnt from your experiences. There will always be challenges and obstacles in sport. That's what makes it the great thing that it is, and that's what makes all of us keep coming back for more. Sport is an environment where we need to dig deep within ourselves at every step of the way to not only survive, but to flourish, and in usually a very visible and public arena. I've been involved with sport all my life, and while I've been fortunate enough to have many fantastic experience and gain some small accolades, both as an athlete and as an administrator, what really means more to me is what I've learnt at a personal level and the fantastic, incredible opportunities that have been offered to me along the way. The biggest opportunity, of course, and as it turned out, the biggest challenge, was being chef de mission of the Australian Olympic team recently in Rio. Going to the first ever Olympic Games in South America, we knew that Rio would be tough and would be a huge challenge, not only for me, but for everybody involved in the team, athletes and officials. So I braced myself. I didn't hide from the fact that it would be tough, and I did my absolute best to ensure that we were all prepared for those challenges and were as aware as we could be going there. I knew from the start that those who were going to be successful in Rio, and that definition of success is an interesting one in these games, but those people who were going to be successful were those who could weather the challenges better than anybody else. Hiding from or ignoring challenges in whatever we do in our lives, in sport or business or family life, will never work. So the mantra that I used with my headquarters staff and with our team leaders, the heads of all the sports, in the 3 years leading into Rio was that we had to be resilient. We actually had to be beyond resilient. We needed to be Braziliant. And boy, did we ever. Rio is now widely acknowledged as the most difficult and challenging games ever. Zika, which turned out to be a complete and utter non-event. I didn't see one bloody mosquito in the 7 weeks that I was there. Transport, security, incomplete venues, unfinished roads, no ticket sales, a dysfunctional and, dare I say it, largely corrupt government, an impeached president, a non-existent economy, no culture of volunteerism whatsoever. And of course, the final bonus surprise factor for us, an athletes' village that was both unsafe and uninhabitable when we arrived. After 3 years of preparation, though, we were ready for Rio. We were as ready as anyone could be heading into what was such a foreign environment in so many ways. I'd put every ounce of my being, physically, emotionally, mentally, intellectually, into the planning and preparation for those 3 years prior. I'd left my full-time employment and devoted myself 100% to the team. I'm not someone who leaves any stone unturned in order to do the best job possible. So what was the best job possible? And actually the question I get asked most is, what the hell is a stupidly named chef de mission? Contrary to public belief, and Jeff's probably the only person in the room who will know this, the chef de mission doesn't actually chop the onions and cook the spaghetti bolognese for all the athletes, and heaven help them if I did. Chef de mission basically means head of delegation. In a business sense, I'm the CEO of a business, and that business happens to be the Australian Summer Olympic team. The chef is largely a voluntary position, yet from 2 years out, I was full-time, more than full-time. It really is a 24/7 commitment with constant demands operationally and logistically from the team, the corporates, and our very good friends, the media. My business, while being very much in the public and media spotlight day in, day out for the years prior, actually only exists for 16 days every 4 years. The workforce of my business, being athletes, officials and headquarter staff, totals around 850 people. It is effectively, though, over 60 completely different demographics coming together for the first time ever in those 16 days in a very foreign environment. I should also mention that probably 15-20% at max of the workforce actually gets paid for being there. The majority of the headquarters, the medical and the media staff are all volunteers, even though they're all on call 24/7 during those 16 days. My business, while commonly perceived as being funded by taxpayers' money, doesn't receive one dime from the government. It's wholly and solely funded by corporates and fundraising, and without that we wouldn't be able to send a team to the Summer or Winter Games or the Youth Olympics. My business has to measure and uniform over 1,000 people, each receiving over 60 individual items of clothing and accessories. And heaven forbid if an official gets the wrong size, even if they have put on 15 kilos since they were measured a year earlier. Because of course we have to measure and we have to order the uniforms 9-10 months prior to the Olympic Games before we even know who's going to be selected in the team. Oh, and that uniform of course is also under heavy scrutiny from the public and the media. My business has the ability to inspire and divide a nation. Looking back to London, Anna Mears, Sally Pearson inspire. James Magnuson and the swimmers divide a nation, all in the space of just a couple of days. My KPI as CEO of this business was to finish in the top 5 of a worldwide field, 206 National Olympic Committees, noting that most of our major competitors in that field have 10 plus times the population of Australia and are certainly funded 10 plus times higher than we are. So that was my job. Pretty run-of-the-mill for a CEO, really. I'm sure there's plenty of CEOs in the room. Previously, the CEO or the chef role had been largely a figurehead one. I don't do figurehead very well. I need to roll up my sleeves. I need and want to make a difference, to add value in everything that I do. And when I was first appointed, I remember my first thought. I said, okay, I can be chef de mission or I can do it. So what did doing chef de mission mean? For me, it meant drawing on my previous Olympic experiences, and I'd been to 4 games prior to Rio, to develop a strategic approach for the Rio team. It meant having a very clear vision and associated objectives and articulating those to all our prospective team members and to the public and the media. Our team vision for Rio was to be the most respected team in the world. And the key words that we used throughout the campaign were respect, pride, and humility. And our hashtag, our mantra from day one was one team. While I'd been, as I said, to 4 Olympic Games prior to Rio, it was 2 main experiences from Sydney and London that really drove me personally to put so much focus on that vision and the one team approach. My experience in Sydney as an athlete wasn't really a positive one, to be honest. I didn't really feel part of a team. I was in a very low-profile sport and competing on the very last day when everyone else was out partying. They'd done. Then in London, when I was Deputy Chef de Mission, that was a huge honour and great fun. But again, I didn't really feel like I was doing anything to make a difference to the team. And in my mind, there can and should be no passengers on any Olympic team. London was a great opportunity, though, to sit back and observe. And what I observed, I didn't really like. I saw a fractured team. I saw 26 different sports happening to wear the same colour tracksuit, but with no real sense of unity or support or respect. Now, this is in absolutely no way a reflection on the London chef. I was part of that leadership team. It's just how the team was at that time, and we didn't know what we didn't know, and we didn't know to do anything differently. I won't go into the aftermath of London, but I think pretty much everybody knows what transpired from those games. So in Rio, I wanted to make sure that every single athlete on our team, no matter if they're a high-profile basketballer or an unknown badminton player, were all treated exactly the same. No one athlete and no one sport was any different or any better than anyone else. They are all Olympians, and they all deserved to be given the same opportunity to perform at their very best. So post-London, I was appointed chef for the Rio team in August 2013, 3 years almost to the day before the Games started. I was the first ever female chef de mission for Australia and one of only a handful amongst the 206 other countries. I remember one of the first interviews I did on the day I was appointed was with a journalist, a male journalist, who asked me, "Okay, congratulations, Kitty, and what are you going to do to be a good female chef de mission?" And I looked at him and said, "Bugger all." And he sort of looked at me, and then I said, "But I'm going to do everything in my power to be a good chef de mission, full stop." And that drove my personal mantra, as I said before. I could be chef de mission, or I could do it. And I decided then and there I was not going to sit back this time and observe. I was going to do this role. And that meant not only trying to change the entire culture of the team, but to also transform the role of chef from a largely figurehead one into one that was seen as a genuine leader. A role that developed a strategic vision and drove the effective operational implementation of that vision. And a role that articulated that vision to not only prospective team members, but also to Australia, to the fundraisers, to the corporates who we rely on, as I said, for funding, to be able to send a team away, and to the media. To me, leadership, nothing to do with badges or titles. A leader has to earn the trust and respect of whomever they're leading. They have to genuinely care about who they're leading, in most cases more than they care about themselves. At the end of the day, as a chef de mission, I can't make Kate Campbell swim any quicker. I can't make Anna Mears spin round that velodrome any faster. What I could do, though, along with the rest of our headquarters staff and team leaders, was to do everything in our power to ensure we provided a performance excellence focused and respectful environment to enable our athletes to do their very best. We worked really hard on building and developing that environment over the last 3 years, and because it has to take 2 years out, I could not arrive in Rio when all the athletes were there, put my hand up and say, "Right, okay, I'm your chef, so do what I say." And we all happen to be wearing the same tracksuit, so I guess we're a team now. Doesn't work that way. You can't create a team in 16 days. You also cannot be a leader just because you have a title. You have to earn the respect and trust of those you are responsible for over time and really invest yourself in that process. Our team in Rio consisted of 421 athletes and we're competing in 26 of the 28 sports, plus around 400 additional officials and coaches. Many of those people had never met anyone outside their own sport before they arrived in Rio. For that reason, in my mind, it was vital that we created a team before we even arrived in South America. It was vital to educate our prospective Olympians about what it means to be a part of the Australian Olympic team, to tell them that they're now part of a much broader team, broader than their own sport or their own event. It was vital that everyone felt aligned to a common goal and a common vision. It's important for everyone in any business to understand the bigger picture that they're a part of. So what I did was to tell our selected athletes that they weren't just members of the 2016 Australian Olympic team, but rather they were adding their name to a 120-year-old team that started way back with Edwin Flack in 1896 in Athens. That 120-year-old team, that was the glue that held 26 different sports, the personalities, the egos together. And it took 2 years for that glue to set, but it did set. What we did was I devised a culture and values roadshow, which involved 2 sessions, the first 18 months and the second 6 months out from the Games. We spoke to over 1,200 prospective Olympians, athletes and officials. The sessions were all emceed and delivered by Olympians. It was current and previous Olympians talking to future Olympians, but all in the one team. The sessions were a mix of inspiration, education, and the necessary operational elements. The athletes loved them, and they absolutely achieved what we set out to do, which was to create one team. When we did all finally arrive in the village, once it was safe and habitable, there was an environment that was visibly respectful of everyone in the team, and that is what sport can do and does. It brings people together, like all of you here tonight, creating your own chapter in a long history. So what was Rio really like? Was the village as bad as all that? Yep. The day before, I decided that we would not move in, even though we had 20 athletes arriving at 6 o'clock the next morning. There was water running down walls. I was standing in a pool of water in apartment floors. There was water dripping out of exposed wires in unattached light fittings. There was no light fittings, let alone lights, in any of the stairwells. The lifts worked, going down, not up, and they would frequently just stop anyway. There were gas leaks in pretty much all the kitchens, and the shower recess in my own room was literally filled with 6 inches of raw sewage. I kid you not. So those detractors around who decided they'd have a go at me for being precious, I would have liked to see them move into some of those rooms. And those detractors who had a go at me for creating a media storm and apparently seeking personal attention, well, the day after I did make this public, my new best mate, the Mayor of Rio, sent 3,000 contractors into the village at 7 o'clock the next morning and helped not only Australia, but all the other countries as well. Was Rio that dangerous on the streets that we had to be as strict as we were with our security protocols? Absolutely yes. 30 seconds after I walked into the opening ceremony, I got a call saying that 2 of our rowing coaches had been held up, mugged, robbed at knife point, 100 metres from our accommodation, and that became pretty much a daily occurrence. I did not want to have to ring any athlete's mother and tell them that their child wouldn't be coming home from Rio. The challenges that we expected were there in bucket loads, probably more, definitely more than we could have expected. I started a diary when I arrived in Rio. I'll write a damn good book one day. But to be honest, most nights by the time I eventually got to bed, and in the 7.5 weeks I was there, I actually counted, and I had an average of 3.5 hours sleep every night for 7 weeks. So I opened my diary, and some days I just didn't know where to start. You honestly couldn't write a movie script for some of the days that we endured. One day, it was actually only day 3. I'd filled in everything in my diary for the day, day 3, so swimming, it would have been about 3:15 in the morning. And then I suddenly remembered, oh yeah, that's right, the dining hall ceiling collapsed this morning and everyone had to be evacuated. But something like that almost became a minor occurrence with everything else that was going on. On that same day, for instance, day 3, that the dining hall collapsed due to strong winds, we had the lifts in our building break and several athletes stuck in there for over an hour, some trying to get to competition. We had 3 bullets that ended up in the media tent at the equestrian venue, where we had staff in that tent and athletes competing right next door. And that night, my driver got horrifically lost. I was driving around the favelas for 2.5 hours and missed the women's rugby gold medal game. That was all in the space of just one day, and that was not a day out of the ordinary by any stretch. Those type of occurrences happen every single day. It was a constant demand to assess the situation, to make decisions under huge pressure, to communicate those decisions to those relevant, to release a press statement or do a press conference, and to then review whatever systems or policies or processes we had in place in case any needed to be escalated. And all those challenges were, of course, on top of what I was actually trying to do, was to get to as many sports and support our athletes and to watch them succeed and strive to do their personal best on the world stage. And while there were plenty of challenges, there are also plenty of athletes, as there always are from our athletes. Watching Mac Horton finish so incredibly strongly to beat Sun Yang in the 400 freestyle for our first individual gold on night 1 of the swimming. Seeing shooter Kathryn Skinner, such a humble, down-to-earth athlete, person, hold her nerve incredibly to win Australia's first ever gold in the women's trap. Well, I didn't see it, unfortunately, but our rugby sevens girls, such a superb, fantastic, committed team on and off the field. And of course, my little Chloe Esposito in my sport of modern pentathlon, winning Australia's first ever Olympic medal in that sport, a sport that I was honoured to be the first female competitor in 2000. And that colour of that medal happened to be gold, and I was ringside. Absolutely the highlight for me. But it wasn't only the medals that were a highlight. I remember one day playing table tennis with Paddy Mills just before he was going off to one of his games. It was seeing the water polo boys sitting in the stands in just their Speedos, and believe me, everybody was looking at them, not just me, watching our women's team in their quarter-final match, which they just lost in a shootout. And it was seeing tennis player Sam Groff, who was making the absolute most of his Olympic experience. And his last day in Rio, he was determined to get as many sports as he could, and he got 7 in. There were so many highlights to balance out all those challenges. So as tough as the last few years, and especially the last few months have been, if I go back to why I do it, why do we all do it? Everybody here puts in so much hard work to sport. As tough as it's been, I still count myself incredibly lucky that I've had this opportunity to further learn and grow and develop as a person. And I'm lucky to have been able to try to contribute in an environment that I believe in and that I'm very, very passionate about. And that's the benefit of sport and the good that sport can do. So I hope very much that everyone in this room can find your passion in life, in whatever area of sport it may be, and that you're fortunate enough to be granted an opportunity where you can create a difference as an athlete or as an administrator, because that's what makes all the challenges that we all go through so worthwhile. I'd just like to thank all the award winners tonight, those that have already been and those that are about to come. And congratulations also to everyone here who in some way contributes to the award winners. There's always a lot of people behind the people that are up on stage, and they also need to be acknowledged. So good luck to all of you, congratulations, and thank you for having me a part of your family tonight. For your attention. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Such a well-deserved standing ovation for such a thought-provoking and important speech about Rio, its chaos, its successes, however that might be defined, and most importantly, about leadership. And I'm sure you all agree with me about what Kitty just demonstrated when it comes to leadership. We're so grateful to have you here tonight. I do just have one question for you, and that is Tokyo 2020. Are we going to be fortunate enough to see you there?
First I need to catch up on those 3.25 hours sleep, and that's going to take me a while. To be honest, Rio is still very raw in a lot of ways. It was quite traumatic in a lot of ways, and it's going to take quite a few of us a while to recover from. If people feel I still have something to add value to and something to contribute to Tokyo, I'd love to go around again and to build on what we've achieved in the last 4 years. And if I was honoured enough and lucky enough to be given that opportunity, I'd love to do it. And it'd be a hell of a lot easier, I can tell you.